Nice work, Wrench. Fix that junk yet?
No one could have guessed. The grease-stained mechanic in the Phoenix base was the most terrifying shadow of Delta Force. For 3 years, Nova Anderson lived like a ghost, mocked by her comrades with the nickname Wrench. But when SEAL Team Bravo vanished without a trace, a coded message vibrated in her jacket pocket. Execute Valkyrie Protocol. Only 12 people in the world knew those words, and all of them understood that whoever received this order would face an impossible mission. With no support, no rescue. Could a harmless mechanic single-handedly destroy an enemy fortress and bring her team back unscathed? Red dust from the Kakovia Mountains blurred the Phoenix base's yard, mingling with the thick smell of engine oil in the air. Amid the clatter of wrenches and the growl of motors, Sergeant Nova Anderson knelt close to the cold concrete floor, her hands blackened with grease. Her brown hair was neatly tied back, her steel-gray eyes quietly tracking the spin of a Humvee's drive belt. To everyone around, she was just a mechanic, silent, reserved, always reeking of fuel. The Phoenix motor pool sprawled like a small town. Rows of armored vehicles, supply trucks, and stacks of containers filled with spare parts cluttered under the blazing sun. This was Nova's domain. She knew every vehicle like her own body. Which engine misfired, which gearbox needed replacing, which tire could handle a few hundred more miles. Young soldiers sometimes teased her with the nickname Wrench. But no one denied that if anything made of steel stopped running, Nova could bring it back to life. She lived as if her entire world revolved around bolts and engines. No coffee chats with teammates. No banter during breaks. No stories about home. Just a small figure blending into a sea of steel and grease. An ordinary mechanic. Too ordinary to be noticed. But that ordinariness was the perfect disguise. Every clank of a wrench on concrete hid years of blood-soaked shadows. Every smudge of oil on her hands concealed fingers that had coldly pulled triggers in moonless nights. At Phoenix, Nova played the role of an unnoticed technician. But in the shadows of classified files, she was once Phantom Anderson, the dagger hidden in Delta Force's sleeve. That afternoon, sunlight streamed through the warped tin roof of the garage, casting a golden glow on the truck resting on its lift. Nova leaned in, tightening a bolt, feeling the torque twist through her wrist. The familiar rhythm of mechanics was like a lullaby, steady, even, calming. For 3 years, she had made herself part of that rhythm, blending in, fading out, unremarkable. Outside, guards changed shifts. Boots crunched heavily on gravel. The distant hum of a helicopter echoed. Everything ran on schedule, on time, like any other day in this tense borderland. And that was exactly what Nova wanted. To be unremarkable, unnoticed, unsuspected. But sometimes, silence stretched too long becomes the warning of an approaching storm. On the workbench beside her, the computer screen flickered with routine maintenance logs. Nova glanced over, her eyes skimming as habit. Most were mundane. Wear reports, oil change requests, parts awaiting delivery. All dull. Until one line made her gray eyes freeze for a split second. SEAL Team Bravo departed 22. Mission. Shepherd's Watch. Expected return. 6. Status. No contact, overdue 8 hours. A chill ran down her spine, colder than the concrete beneath her knees. In Kakovia's land, 8 hours of silence didn't mean technical issues. It meant one of two things: captured or dead. Nova took a deep breath, scanning the motor pool where carefree comrades laughed and saw her as the harmless Wrench. They didn't see what she just saw. They didn't hear the alarm bells ringing in her subconscious. Tonight, the steady rhythm of Phoenix would not remain unchanged. Late afternoon at Phoenix sank into a haze of red dust streaked with sunset. The motor pool's sounds droned on, hammers clanging, generators humming, laughter echoing from young soldiers trading harmless jabs. Nova tightened an engine cover, wiping her oil-soaked hands on a ragged cloth, trying to ignore the reports still burning in her mind. SEAL Team Bravo, overdue 8 hours, no contact. Her old instincts pounded a warning rhythm, but Nova kept her face blank. In this place, panic was a confession. She bent back to the engine, tightening another bolt, as if the truck was all that mattered. Then the small, bulky phone in her chest pocket vibrated. One pulse, short, sharp. Unlike any ordinary message, Nova froze. This was the device she hadn't touched in 3 years. A triple encrypted sat phone, non-existent in the base's inventory. She pulled it out, shielding it in her palm, her fingers trembling not from fear, but from certainty. All peace was over. The black screen lit up with 3 cold, precise lines. Package compromised. Execute Valkyrie protocol. Omega-7 clearance. In that moment, the world seemed to pause. The laughter outside the garage grew distant. The hammer's clang fell into an abyss. Valkyrie. One word. Enough to redirect the blood in Nova's veins. It wasn't an ordinary order. It was a top-secret directive. Off the books. Authorizing the recipient to use any means legal or not to recover assets or personnel. It meant no rescue, no support, no official existence. If she failed, she'd be a rogue element. If she succeeded, no report would exist beyond a cold line. Package delivered. Nova's hand still gripped the wrench, but her mind shifted gears. She stepped away from the truck, walking straight to the comm center where Staff Sergeant Williams monitored radio signals. "Williams, I need last night's patrol summary." Her voice was calm, steady, like asking for a routine report. Williams looked up, frowning. "What's the motor pool need patrol logs for?" Nova didn't flinch. "Vehicle wear check. I need to know which units pushed them too hard." Williams shrugged, not bothering to question further, and opened the digital file. Reports flooded the screen, countless minor details. But Nova sought one entry. Bravo SEAL Team, Shepherd's Watch. Departed 22. Expected return says. Status, no contact. When Williams turned to ask more, Nova was already gone. She strode back to the garage, where shadows began swallowing the rows of vehicles. Under a rusted steel bench, hidden behind cluttered drawers, was a safe no one at Phoenix knew existed. Nova knelt, pulling out a dust-covered metal box. The moment she opened it, cold light glinted off steel and composite plastic. No trace of the mechanic remained. This was Nova's true world. Weapons, tactical gear, military sat phone, explosives, and the armor that had kept her alive through missions maps dared not mark. The sat phone powered on, connecting to a number that didn't exist. A crackle, then a low, gravelly voice. "Control." Nova replied curtly. "This is Phantom. Package status. Compromised. 6 assets confirmed captured. Location. Grid coordinates 41.7258 north, 44.6372 east. Enemy force, over 40. Conventional rescue impossible." Nova felt her breathing steady. The cold calm that made her a nightmare in intelligence files returned. Request tactical package and real-time data. A pause, one beat too long. Then, Control replied, "Negative. This mission is off books. No support, no acknowledgement. If you accept, you're officially rogue. Proceed?" Nova glanced around the dim garage, where oil stains still gleamed under yellow lights. This was where she'd hidden for 3 years, pretending to be harmless. But now that mask had cracked. "Positive control," she whispered. "Confirmed. Phantom. This is voluntary. No survival guarantee. Understood?" "Understood." The call cut off, leaving only static in the air. Nova set the phone down, her hand brushing the dust-covered rifle. One deep breath, and her steel eyes burned again. From that moment, the Phoenix mechanic vanished. Only Phantom Anderson remained. Darkness swallowed the Phoenix motor pool, with only dim yellow bulbs flickering on the steel ceiling. Nova sat alone in the garage, the secret weapons cache open before her. The combat knife gleamed coldly, dust-covered rifles disassembled into parts. Her familiar hands checked each piece like an old ritual. Every motion, every click, every round loaded into the magazine, all summoned a different person. The person she'd buried under grease for 3 years. Delta Force. Officially, the 1st Special Forces Operational Detachment Delta. But in classified circles, they were the ones who don't exist. Nova had been one of their elite killers. For 8 years, she'd carved her name into the files of 4 nations. 47 confirmed kills, 6 unlisted operations, and methods U.S. intelligence only dared call target elimination protocols. She could disarm an armed opponent in close quarters with her bare hands, could assemble a rifle from car parts, could hit an 800-meter target with a junkyard sniper rifle. These weren't report numbers. They were scars etched into her mind, turning Nova into Phantom. But 3 years ago, Operation Blackwater collapsed. Intelligence failures, a compromised rendezvous, fallen teammates, politics and media crushed what remained. Nova was reassigned for combat stress, a face-saving exit for the unit. Her file was sealed, her existence erased. Only a quiet mechanic remained in a forward base. 3 years. She'd forced herself to live harmlessly. 3 years to wash blood with engine oil, to hide her razor-sharp gaze behind a technician's blank stare. But memories never slept. Nightmares returned in the dark. Screams, gunfire, the gasping breaths of teammates left behind. And now, the Valkyrie message had torn that mask apart. Nova sat upright, her gray eyes cold as steel. No room for hesitation. 6 SEALs from Bravo team were held in an enemy stronghold with over 40 guards. A standard rescue would need a company, helicopter support, artillery backup. But this time, there was nothing. No air support, no spec ops, no official maps. Only one person, her. The encrypted phone lay dark after the call with control. Their words echoed. This is voluntary. No survival guarantee. If exposed, you're a rogue element. Nova exhaled slowly. She'd heard those words before, but never so chilling. She stood slowly, her hands brushing the dust-covered HK-416 rifle. 3 years of pretending. Weakness hadn't dulled this familiar weight. The perfect fit as she chambered around. The dry click signaled something long dormant waking up. A small mirror in the garage corner reflected a grease-stained mechanic. But her eyes no longer held submission. They burned with the cold, precise glint of a shadow. Phantom. Outside, Phoenix buzzed with changing shifts, scattered laughter, the endless sounds of military life. No one noticed a storm brewing in the motor pool. No one saw that the woman they mocked as Wrench was about to vanish. Tonight, Nova Anderson would shed her mechanic's shell, and Phantom would return. Inside the vast garage, Nova pulled a tarp from a dark corner. Beneath the dust was the M1078, a cargo truck on paper, under routine maintenance. But for 6 months, every spare night, she'd turned it into something else. Outside, its gray frame and cargo bed looked like any other army truck. But hidden steel plating, secret compartments, and added comms gear were the result of hundreds of meticulous hours. Nova opened the hidden compartments. An oiled HK-416, a Remington 700 with a high-precision scope, a Glock 19 with extended magazines, ammo stacked like chess pieces, a palm-sized signal jammer disguised as a radio, a demolitions kit with remote detonators, each explosive carefully wrapped, a field med kit, tourniquets, morphine. Everything was arranged like a familiar ritual. Grips, barrels, straps, magazines. Check. Clean. Assemble. Each weapon returned to readiness. Each mechanical click like a heartbeat, waking from a coma. For 3 years, Nova played the mechanic. Now, she was a mechanic again, but instead of engines, she was fixing an impossible rescue. On the workbench, a requisition form was ready. Repair truck to pick up parts from Kodiak. Expected duration, overnight. Major Davidson's signature, the motorpool commander, was scrawled carelessly, as if it didn't matter. He didn't know he'd just handed a routine mechanic clearance to leave with a hidden arsenal. Nova tucked the form into her pocket, turning back to the M1078. She checked the hidden armor plating, thin metal strong enough to stop a machine gun burst. Checked the auxiliary comms, a private satellite link control once used. Every detail was in place. She changed clothes. The grease-stained coveralls fell to the floor, revealing tight combat gear. Work boots swapped for Silent Soul combat boots. Her neat bun vanished under a helmet with night vision. In the small mirror, the exhausted mechanic was gone, replaced by a shadow ready to step out of the past. In the driver's seat, Nova laid out a terrain map, marked with satellite-scouted routes. 23 miles north, the enemy complex loomed like a thorn. An old quarry-turned fortress with concrete walls, watchtowers, and an armored vehicle lot. A regular company might fail here. But Phantom didn't play by conventions. Nova took a deep breath. She knew one mistake could kill not just her but all of Bravo team. Executed in retaliation. Time wasn't on her side. The truck's dashboard lit up, the engine roaring in the garage. The vibrations under her seat set her blood alight. This was no longer just an M1078. It was a camouflaged beast, ready to charge into enemy territory. Nova gripped the wheel. The garage door opened, revealing the night beyond. At Phoenix, the guards saw only a mechanic driving off for parts. No one knew a shadow had left the base carrying a storm. At 1,900 hours sharp, Nova drove the M1078 down the gravel road to the base's gate. Kakovia's sky had darkened, the mountain ridge purple in the last light. The checkpoint ahead flashed its floodlights, yellow beams catching stiff uniforms, an M4S slung across guards' chests. Nova lowered the window, holding up the requisition form. Repair truck for parts pickup at Kodiak, overnight. The guard glanced at the paper, then at the oil-stained woman in coveralls. He sighed, nodding. Go ahead, Wrench. Don't be late. We've got a formation check tomorrow. Nova gave a slight nod, face unchanged. The truck's tires rolled past the barrier, leaving the base's lights in the rear view. The sound of the guard post faded. No one cared. No one suspected the rattling truck carried more than spare parts. As darkness swallowed the M1078, Nova veered off the main road, driving deep into a barren canyon. The headlights snapped off, leaving only thick night. She stopped, took a deep breath, and began her transformation. The mechanic's coveralls were stripped off, falling in a dirty heap. Dark combat gear hugged her frame, ceramic plates locked into place. Heavy work boots gave way to lighter combat boots with soft rubber soles. She zipped up the tactical vest, securing the helmet with night vision. The night vision flipped on, bathing her view in pale green. Every move was silent. Only the faint click of metal and zippers. No trace of wrench remained. From a hidden compartment, Nova pulled the HK-416, attaching a suppressor, checking the scope, sliding the magazine into place. She set it by the driver's seat, within reach. Next came the Remington 700, the sniper rifle that had etched her name into feared intelligence reports. On the dashboard, she activated the hidden comms system, a private satellite channel. A 3D map flickered on, marking the enemy complex. An abandoned quarry-turned fortress. Thick concrete walls, overlapping watchtowers, an armored vehicle lot. Distance, 23 miles. A mission a regular company would hesitate to take. And now, it was hers alone. Nova gripped the wheel, restarting the engine. The roar echoed. But in the dark, it sounded like a war drum. The truck shook, tires crushing loose rock. The road ahead was brutal. Jagged canyons, loose stones ready to slide. But Nova moved without hesitation. Every curve, every steep drop, She navigated like reading a familiar map. The feeling wasn't new. It was rebirth. Miles from the base, Nova stopped again. She climbed into the truck's bed, opening the hidden demolitions compartment. C4 packs, remote detonators, all ready. She checked them, then locked it shut. In the dark, her face was stern, her eyes sharp as metal. For 3 years, Nova lived as a repair tool. Tonight, she was a fixer again, not of engines but of problems. And the problem was 6 SEALs held in an enemy fortress. She climbed back into the cabin, settling into the driver's seat, her left hand on the gear shift, her right brushing the rifle's grip. In that moment, Nova knew, from now on, there was no turning back. Darkness swallowed the M1078, the iron beast charging into the mountains. Its tires ground through rock, each jolt like the heartbeat of a reawakened phantom. The M1078's tires left the main road, rolling deep into a winding canyon where moonlight barely dusted the jagged cliffs with faint silver. Nova stopped under an overhanging rock, killing the engine. The machine fell silent, leaving the eerie stillness of the night. She stepped out of the cabin, her combat boots hitting the dry ground without a sound louder than the wind. On her back, a heavy pack of weapons and explosives weighed her down, but her steps remained light, steady, instinctive. Ahead, Kakovia's mountains loomed, their dark crevices like the jaws of a beast ready to swallow the reckless. This was enemy territory. One wrong step could trigger a rock slide, alerting the fortress. One heavy breath could echo to a guard's ears. Nova knelt, adjusting her night vision. The world turned green, heat signatures stark against the display. Nothing but cold rocks, endless ravines, and the howling wind. Perfect for a shadow. She moved in short, precise steps. Her body hugged the cliffs, camouflaged by darkness. Climbing, crawling, slithering, every motion rehearsed 1,000 times. Each pause she listened. Heartbeat, shifting wind, sand under her knees. No excess sound. After over an hour, she stopped on a narrow ledge. From this height, she could see faint lights flickering in the distance. The enemy complex. A dim fire in the black night. The old quarry-turned-fortress came into view. She went prone, pulling the Remington 700 from her pack, setting its bipod on the ledge. Through the infrared scope, details sharpened. Concrete buildings around a central yard. 4 watchtowers at each corner, creating overlapping fields of fire. A vehicle lot with pickup trucks mounted with heavy machine guns, parked neatly, awaiting orders. Guards patrolled in cycles, but not carelessly. They changed routes unpredictably, shifting positions suddenly. Their movements showed trained discipline, not amateurs. Nova exhaled softly, eyes glued to the scope. A frontal assault would be suicide. Even a company would struggle to survive here. But she didn't need a company. She needed darkness. In her mind, a mental map formed. Guard positions, patrol routes, blind spots. Nova memorized every detail like carving it into stone. She couldn't afford a mistake. 6 lives depended on her reading this map correctly. The wind shifted, blowing red dust across her face. Nova didn't move. Weak moonlight cast her shadow on the ground. But in a moment, she melted back into the dark, gone as if never there. 2 more hours of stalking. Nova crawled through a crevice, descending closer. Now just 800 meters from the complex. From here, every detail was vivid, like a living blueprint. Floodlights swept back and forth, white beams slicing the dark. Each time a beam passed, Nova pressed herself to the ground, her breathing so slow it nearly vanished. Through the scope, she saw guards change shifts at the eastern tower. Timing: 7 minutes per cycle. At the southwest corner, patrol routes overlapped every 15 minutes, creating a brief gap. Nova calculated silently, each detail chaining into a plan. If she moved with the rhythm, she could slip through undetected. If she mistimed, a domino chain would crash down on her. She checked her military watch, syncing it to the observed guard shifts. Each second ticked heavily. Her hand rested on the rifle, ready to drop any target if needed. But that was the last resort. She needed to infiltrate without alerting the fortress. A strong gust carried the diesel smell from the generator. Nova's lips twitched. That was her first link. If she cut the power, the fortress would plunge into darkness, disabling electronic security and sowing chaos among the guards. She stowed the Remington, slithering behind a rock, checking her explosives pack. The familiar weight pressed her shoulders, a reminder. From now on, every move had to be as precise as surgery. In the distance, the fortress lights flickered. 6 captives were alive somewhere in that concrete heart, and Nova, alone, was about to step into the wolf's den. Kakovia's night was thick as oil, the darkness so dense even moonlight couldn't pierce it. Nova hugged the cold ground, inching down the mountainside. Below, a faint yellow glow lit an auxiliary structure, the generator room, over 200 meters from the main complex. It stood isolated, surrounded by chain-link fencing and a barren dirt path. One guard stood alone nearby, rifle slung across his shoulder, eyes lazily scanning the dark. To anyone else, he was a minor obstacle. To Nova, he was the first link in the chaos to come. She inhaled deeply, slowing her heartbeat. Her hand brushed the combat knife. The cold steel slid silently from its sheath, only a faint metallic whisper. She moved, each step silent as a breeze. Her boots touched the ground without sound. The distance closed. 10 meters. 8. 6. The guard yawned, tilting his head. His final mistake. Nova's hand clamped his mouth, the knife slicing his throat in one clean stroke. Hot blood sprayed, but no scream escaped her grip. The body slumped, dragged swiftly behind the generator casing. In 10 seconds, he was just another shadow in the night. Nova wiped the blade on a cloth, her motions as calm as tightening a bolt in the garage. She scanned the area. The chain-link fence was under 2 meters, but the open ground would make any intruder a sitting target if spotted. Nova knelt, pulling a short coil of wire cutters from her pack. In seconds, a silent hole appeared. She slipped through, moving like a blade through a gap. Inside, the generator roared steadily, diesel fumes thick. She opened her pack, pulling out a compact C4 block, attaching it to the fuel line. Her fingers secured the remote detonator, checking the signal on her wrist device. A green light blinked. Perfect connection. One press, and the fortress would plunge into darkness. No lights, no cameras, no electronic alarms. Nova slipped back through the fence, resealing it to hide her trace. Everything clean, precise, as if no one had ever been there. She crouched behind a large rock, pulling out the Remington 700, peering through the optic. The complex remained calm. Guards changed shifts. Patrols moved steadily. No one knew a shadow had slipped into their system's heart and planted a fuse. A faint smile crossed Nova's lips. This was just the first phase. The wind shifted, carrying the heavy diesel scent. Nova inhaled deeply, checking her watch. Time was moving. Next plan. Move to the southwest corner's weak point, where natural rock walls shielded the fence from tower views. If she breached there, she could enter without triggering the explosives. But once inside, everything would change. A concrete maze, dozens of armed guards, and 6 bound captives. All hinged on absolute precision. Nova zipped her pack, sliding into the darkness, ready for the next step. The southwest corner of the fortress was a defender's disadvantage. Jagged rock formations rose like wolf's teeth, forming a natural wall that blocked direct tower sightlines. Nova had chosen her entry point well. She crawled along a crevice, body pressed to the ground. Moving so slowly, the sound of fabric on gravel was swallowed by the wind. Through night vision, 2 patrol guards appeared. One tall, one short, exchanging brief words. They were lazier than the main guard units, their steps heavy, rifles slung carelessly. Nova waited, her heartbeat steady, breathing even. When the tall guard stepped into a blind spot, she sprang like a predator. Her combat knife flashed, piercing the gap between his collar and helmet. Blood sprayed silently, his eyes wide with shock before Nova's grip forced his body down. The shorter guard heard a rustle, turning. His eyes met Nova's and the green glow of her night vision flashed. The HK-416 rose to his chest, its black barrel a void. A soft phut. The suppressed round tore through flesh, muffled like a breath in the dark. He crumpled beside his partner. Nova dragged both bodies into a crevice, covering them with a camouflage tarp. By the time the next patrol arrived, their comrades would be gone. But by then the fortress would be chaos. She checked her watch. The eastern tower shift had changed. The 15-minute window opened. This was the moment. Nova slithered toward the fence. Weathered, moss-stained concrete walls formed a perimeter. A small southwest section was obscured by a large rock, untouched by floodlights. She approached silently, pulling a smaller explosive from her pack. Not for destruction, but for entry. A controlled blast, sharp as a scalpel, enough to breach without echoing beyond the rocks. She placed the charge, set the detonator, then slid back, taking cover. A white flash, silent. Dust rose, leaving a hole just wide enough to slip through. Nova darted forward, squeezing through the breach, crawling inside. The air changed. Engine oil, cigarette smoke, the burnt tang of weapons clung to the enclosed space. Sounds echoed from the central yard. Footsteps, mixed voices, clinking metal. The fortress was a sleeping hive, waiting for her to stir it. Nova moved between buildings, darkness swallowing her frame. At each corner she paused, peering through night vision, memorizing routes. Every step calculated, every breath measured. At the fortress's heart, the detention building stood out. Thick walls, barred windows, dim light leaking through cracks. Through her scope, Nova saw movement. Slumped figures, tied to chairs. 6 men. SEAL Team Bravo, alive. She exhaled, cold. But around the building, 4 armed guards stood vigilant. Rifles ready, eyes alert. This was no longer stealth. This was the line between success and failure. Nova retreated, hiding in the shadows between 2 walls, her hand on the HK-416. Her wristwatch blinked. Phase 2 was about to begin. Inside the fortress, Nova moved like a shadow cut loose from its body. Her steps were low and steady, back pressed to icy concrete. No sound, no light betrayed her presence. First target, the northeast watchtower. 2 guards mid-shift change were talking, their low voices carrying. Nova crawled along the wall's base, studying their patrol loop. When one stepped out to smoke, a gap opened. She climbed the iron ladder silently, each step light as a breath. At the top, she slipped behind the remaining guard, knife drawn. A quick choke, silent, and his body went limp. She laid him in a dark corner, propping his rifle as if he were still on duty. From her pack, she pulled a small explosive, securing it to the tower's base with a magnetic clamp. Her fingers set the electronic detonator, sinking it to her wrist device. A green light blinked. She nodded, satisfied. First point, complete. Nova slid down the ladder, vanishing into the shadows behind the walls. Next target, the comms center, a 2-story building, antennas sprouting from its roof, red lights from radio equipment glowing through windows. 2 guards stood outside, rifles ready. Nova circled through a narrow alley, approaching from behind. She hid behind a brick wall, waiting for one guard's laugh to ring out. When he turned, Nova leaned out, firing 2 suppressed shots. Foot. Both collapsed before they could scream. She dragged their bodies into the alley, covering them with an old tarp. Nothing remained but bloodstains quickly absorbed by dry earth. Inside the comms room, electronics crackled. Radios blinked. transmitting what the enemy thought was secure. Nova placed a C4 block among the equipment, adding a secondary charge at the main antenna's base. One trigger, and their entire comm system would burn. A second green light glowed on her wrist. Second point. Complete. Nova wiped sweat with her sleeve. Her body taut as a bowstring but her mind clear. This was what years of training had prepared her for. Final target. The vehicle lot. She moved through concrete rows, nearing the open area where pickup trucks with mounted machine guns stood. Each vehicle was tarped, but their heavy barrels peeked out, ready to unleash fire. If they remained operational, any escape would become a graveyard. 4 guards patrolled the lot. Nova watched, memorizing their rhythms. Then she crawled low, slipping between 2 trucks. The smell of engine oil and damp metal surrounded her, familiar as the motor pool. She opened her pack, attaching a larger C4 block to the nearest truck's fuel tank. Then a second, a third. Each vehicle got a timed bomb, linked to her wrist controller. When triggered, the lot would become a firestorm, sparking a chain reaction. A guard passed close, his boots inches away. Nova pressed herself to the ground, breath halted, hand gripping her knife. His shadow stretched, then vanished around a corner. She finished the last charge, slipping out the same way. Safely distant, she crouched behind a wall, checking her watch. 3 green lights pulsed in sync. Watchtower, comm center, vehicle lot. All ready. Nova's hand tightened around the detonator, its cold metal biting her skin. One press, and the fortress would become a chaotic hive. In that chaos, she'd move to free the 6 bound teammates. She inhaled deeply, her heartbeat steady. No trembling, no hesitation. Only the cold certainty of a shadow who knew exactly when to strike. Nova lay pressed against the wall, her hand gripping the detonator. The air was thick, so quiet she heard her blood pulse in her ears. Then she pressed the button. In a flash, the night erupted. The generator roared one last time. Then a green flame shot skyward. The entire complex plunged into absolute darkness, only emergency red lights flickering like blood. A second blast thundered from the watchtower. Smoke billowed, concrete cracked, the tower collapsing like a felled tree. Bodies fell with it, swallowed by fire. At the center, the comms building exploded violently. Antennas snapped, crashing like giant steel bones. Red lights died. Radio channels went silent. Enemy commanders screamed in chaos, but no signal carried their orders. Then true hell broke loose. The vehicle lot detonated into a sea of fire. Pickup trucks, machine guns, fuel tanks ignited simultaneously, creating a deadly fireworks chain. Flames lit the central yard, mingling with the screams of those blown apart. The fortress, moments ago defiant, became a burning nightmare. Nova rose in the darkness, her eyes glinting under night vision. As the enemy staggered, shouted, and fired blindly, she moved like a blade. A squad ran toward the vehicle lot, rifles raised. Nova lifted her HK-416, her finger squeezing the trigger. Foot, foot, foot. 3 fell, none knowing where the shots came from. She slipped past their bodies, advancing to the central yard. Red emergency lights blinked, casting flickering shadows, perfect for a phantom to hide. A guard turned, eyes panicked. Nova was already behind him. Her knife flashed, slicing his throat, and he collapsed silently. Shouts, random gunfire, the roar of flames consuming metal. The entire base became a maze of chaos. But in that maze, Nova walked as if she alone held the map. Each target she chose fell before they could fire. A precise shot through the head, a knife across the throat, a clean strike disarming a rifle. Enemy soldiers tried forming a perimeter, but without orders or comms, each small group acted alone, picked off by Nova one by one. In 10 minutes, the fortress's 40 defenders dwindled to 25. In their eyes, the attacker wasn't human. It was darkness, invisible shots, a reaper choosing its moment. A commander's shout echoed. Rally around the detention block. Protect the prisoners. Nova heard it, exactly as she planned. By converging on the target, they made themselves prey. She slipped through a narrow corridor, climbing onto a low roof, crawling across concrete. From here, she saw the detention building clearly. Red emergency lights illuminated 4 tense guards at the door. They spun constantly, rifles aimed into the dark. Nova raised her Remington 700, steadying the barrel. Through the scope, her heart slowed. 1 beat, 2 beats, her fingers squeezed. Foot. The first guard dropped, skull shattered. The others barely turned before the second bullet tore through another's chest. Nova shifted instantly, sliding off the roof, vanishing before return fire shredded the wall. She landed in darkness, circling to a side entrance. Guards shouted outside, but they didn't know death was already inside. The detention block's corridor was thick with darkness, reeking of mildew, sweat, and blood. At its end, a heavy steel door stood shut, faint light leaking through a crack. Inside, 6 SEALs from Bravo team sat bound to chairs, battered but defiant. Around them, 4 armed guards waited. Not lax but tense to the breaking point. They knew something was killing their comrades outside. They expected an assault through the main door, positioned for an ambush. But Phantom never took the obvious path. Nova pressed her back to the side wall, pulling a small explosive from her pack, attaching it to a cracked concrete section. The detonator was set precisely, just enough to breach without echoing. A white flash. The wall burst silently. Dust and debris clouded the air. And before the guards could react, Nova slid through the hole. HK 416 raised to her chest. Foot. 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 3 suppressed shots rang out in under 3 seconds. 3 guards collapsed, eyes wide, blood pooling across their chests. The last one turned, shouting, but Nova's knife pierced his throat before the sound formed. Silence. Only the captive's ragged breathing remained. Nova lowered her rifle, striding toward them. In the red emergency light, she saw bloodied faces, matted beards, and eyes still burning with a SEAL's defiance. Lieutenant Colonel Hayes, Bravo's leader, looked up, his lips curling into a weary smile. "Took you long enough, you bastard." His voice rasped, laced with the sarcasm of an old comrade. Nova didn't reply, only drew her knife, slicing through his ropes. Parking was a bitch. Hayes gave a dry laugh, then slumped as blood seeped from his shoulder wound. Nova moved to the next man, her knife cutting swiftly, ropes falling like shed snakeskin. One by one they were freed, and into their hands, Nova pressed rifles taken from dead guards. "Take what works. We're short on time." A SEAL struggled to stand, limping from a leg wound, but his eyes blazed. Another rose, hands trembling but gripping a rifle. They were battered, but not broken. Nova pulled bandages from her pack, wrapping Hayes's shoulder, injecting morphine into another. Temporary fixes, but enough to keep them moving. "Outside?" Hayes asked, voice strained. Nova glanced through a window, where the vehicle lot's flames lit the yard. 40 down to about 25. Comms cut. Vehicles gone. "We've got minutes before they regroup." Hayes nodded, a glint of admiration in his eyes. "You did all this alone? Mechanics got a new job description?" Nova chambered a round into her HK 416, handing him an M4 from a dead guard. "Can you fight?" "I can," Hayes replied, lifting the rifle, his eyes igniting. "Then let's move." Nova scanned the room one last time. 4 dead guards lay scattered, red emergency light glinting off blood pools. 6 SEALs, now armed, stood like resurrected shadows. For a moment Nova wasn't alone, but she knew the weight still rested on her. One mistake, and they'd all die. She led them to the side door, HK 416 ready. Outside, the fortress burned, smoke curling into the night. In that chaos, an escape route had opened. The side door swung open. Nova charged out first. HK 416 raised. 6 figures followed, stumbling but eyes fierce. They were no longer prisoners, they were seals reborn in fire and blood. Outside, the fortress had turned from chaos to fury. Shouts mixed with erratic gunfire, flames from the vehicle lot painting the yard red. The enemy was regrouping, squads running toward the detention block with rifles raised. Nova signaled, "Follow me. Keep low." She darted forward, taking cover behind a collapsed wall. 3 enemies appeared, rifles aimed. Nova fired. Foot. Foot. 3 bodies dropped, like cut puppets. A wounded SEAL knelt, returning fire. His bullet struck an advancing enemy square in the chest. Though trembling, his hand was steady as steel. Bullets whistled past, stone chips flying. Nova signaled, leading them across the yard. The vehicle lot's flames lit their path. This was no longer stealth. This was a race for survival. A squad emerged from a corridor, firing wildly. Nova tossed a grenade. A flash, then a deafening blast. When the smoke cleared, only twisted bodies remained. "Go!" she shouted. The SEALs charged, sweat and blood mingling. They neared the central yard. Ahead, the vehicle lot's firewall roared, turning the air red. Shadows danced in the flames. Enemies screaming, running chaotically. But amid the chaos, Nova saw danger. Squads tightening their circle, trying to trap them in a kill zone. She slid behind a half-burned truck, firing relentlessly. Each bullet found its mark, enemies falling before they could sound an alarm. The SEALs returned fire. Short, sharp, precise bursts, their training etched in their blood. A rifle round grazed Nova's helmet, sparking. She rolled aside, raising the Remington 700, aiming through the optic. A sniper on a roof peeked out, only to catch a bullet through his forehead, collapsing like a broken doll. "North Main Gate!" Hayes shouted, voice hoarse. "Only way out." Nova nodded, signaling. The group veered north. Gunfire roared behind, bullets chasing like rain. But they didn't stop. Nearing the main gate, Nova saw the brutal truth. The enemy had set up a heavy machine gun at the exit. Its black barrel gleamed, ready to unleash a storm of steel. The group halted, taking cover behind a broken wall. Breaths came ragged, sweat rolled through blood and dust. A burst of gunfire tore into the wall, stone shards flying. Hayes turned to Nova, eyes cold. "If we don't take out that gun, we're dead here." Nova wiped sweat, her eyes glinting in the firelight. Her hand tightened on the HK 416, then dropped to her pack. She'd prepared for this. The machine gun's roar echoed, bullets ripping the concrete wall where Nova and the SEALs hid. Stone chips flew, dust choking the air, making each breath heavy. Each shot was a giant hammer, pinning them down. "We're pinned," a SEAL shouted, voice caught in the smoke. Nova stayed silent. Her hand gripped her pack strap. This wasn't her first dance with death. And like always, Phantom's calm returned. "Cover fire," she said sharply. "I'll handle it." Hayes stared. "You alone." "No time." Nova cut him off, eyes cold. "Trust me." She dug into her pack, pulling a compact C4 pack with a remote detonator. A clean, insane plan, but their only shot. "Cover me for 30 seconds." Nova signaled. "When I signal, stop firing." Without waiting, she sprang from cover, darting left. HK 416 raised. She fired bursts to mask her real move. The machine gun roared, its barrel swinging, bullets tearing the air, but Nova slid behind a charred truck near the gate. Smoke from the burning lot cloaked her, both a hazard and perfect camouflage. She crawled low, inching toward the machine gun. Her heart beat steady, each pulse a countdown. Heat from the flames seared her skin, but she ignored it. 10 meters out, she pulled the C4, attaching it to an abandoned fuel drum by the wall near the gun. Her fingers set the detonator, the green light flashing. Nova turned, signaling. Hayes shouted, "Cease fire!" In a rare moment of quiet, Nova pressed the button. The explosion shook the ground. The fuel drum detonated, blasting the machine gun and its crew into a firestorm. The path ahead blazed open, black smoke rising like a pillar of hell. "Go, now!" Nova yelled, voice sharp. The SEALs didn't hesitate. They charged from cover, moving in a tight formation. Though wounds slowed their steps, their steel will drove them forward. Nova fired relentlessly, each bullet dropping enemies still shooting. A SEAL fell, but Nova hauled him up, slinging his arm over her shoulder. The main gate loomed through smoke and fire, its steel frame warped from the blast. Beyond, Kakovia's dark mountains waited. But behind, shouts grew louder. Boots pounded concrete. Orders screamed. Sporadic gunfire closing in like a storm. Nova led, HK 416 blazing. Each shot carved a path through the chaos. They passed the gate, plunging into the night. Mountain wind hit their faces, smoke and blood clinging. But Nova didn't look back. She knew the fortress wouldn't give up. Darkness swallowed the group as they fled the gate. No firelight guided them, only pale moonlight on Kakovia's jagged peaks. But the quiet didn't last. Flares shot into the sky. White light tore the night, illuminating every rock, every bush. Gunfire screamed, bullets sparking dirt near their heels. "They're closing in," a SEAL yelled. "Stay in formation. Follow me." Nova snapped, voice sharp as a blade. She led them through a narrow crevice, loose rocks rolling underfoot. Each step fought the brutal terrain. Slick slopes, sheer cliffs, blinding dust. But Nova knew every inch. 3 years at Phoenix weren't wasted. She'd studied the land like an engine, every crevice, every trail burned into her mind. A burst of gunfire screamed behind. Nova spun, raising her HK 416. Foot, foot, foot. 3 enemies fell, shadows collapsing on stone. The SEALs pressed on, their faces twisted in pain but eyes fierce. Nova tossed a smoke grenade back. Thick clouds billowed, swallowing their pursuers. Coughs and wild gunfire veered off, shooting into nothing. Nova seized the chance, leading the group left into a crevice. The terrain grew harsher. Jagged rocks rose like walls. A SEAL slipped, but Nova yanked him up, pushing him forward. No time for weakness. 1 second's pause meant death. Dogs barked in the distance, followed by sirens. The enemy was deploying everything. Nova glanced at her watch. Over an hour since leaving the fortress, but not yet safe. "How far?" Hayes growled. 2 kilometers, Nova replied, eyes on the mountain path. "My truck's waiting." "Your truck?" A limping SEAL gave a dry laugh. "Hope it's a damn tank." Nova didn't answer. She knew what the M1078 had become. But first, they had to survive to reach it. Bullets struck a nearby cliff, stone shards cutting her cheek. Nova turned, firing back. 2 enemies dropped, swallowed by the dark. "Keep moving," she shouted, urging them on. Breaths came ragged, sweat mixed with blood. Every SEAL bore wounds. But they followed Nova like she was their only lifeline. Finally, under faint moonlight, Nova signaled a halt. Ahead, in a dark hollow, the M1078 waited, silent as a crouching beast. Nova ran to it, yanking open the cabin door, checking inside. Untouched. "Ready. Get in," she ordered. The SEALs didn't need telling twice. They climbed into the bed, collapsing onto benches. Weapons still clutched. Some panted, others gritted teeth against pain. But all were alive. Nova slid into the driver's seat, turning the key. The engine roared, a familiar sound echoing through the night. The dashboard glowed, reflecting her cold eyes. In the distance, enemy footsteps and gunfire grew closer. Dark shapes appeared on the ridge, charging toward them. Nova gripped the wheel. The machine was ready. The final escape was about to begin. The M-1078 lurched over the rugged mountain road, but inside, no one spoke. The SEALs slumped in their seats, exhausted but alive. Nova gripped the wheel, eyes locked on the darkness ahead. Behind, the fortress's flames still burned red across Kakovia's sky, a testament to a nightmare ended by one woman. But no one witnessed it. No report would record it. Officially, Nova Anderson was just a mechanic, returning from a parts run. The truth was different. She'd rewritten history in a way no one would dare believe. And tomorrow, she'd be grease-stained again, silent, blending among hundreds of soldiers. But in the shadows, America's enemies had learned a terrifying lesson. Some mechanics don't just fix trucks. They fix problems, permanently. What do you think? If you were the commander, would you keep Nova in the shadows, or reveal this truth? Drop a comment to discuss, and don't miss part 2 of Nova Phantom Anderson's story.